Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests. The first time I rehearsed this speech, it took me 18 minutes and 37 seconds. So hopefully I'll get it down between that 4 and 6 minute mark. I'd like to talk to you today about what brought me here to Toastmasters, while at the same time telling you a little bit about myself, where I grew up, my family, and my education, and my job. And ultimately, the road to Toastmasters. I have some nostalgia for my natal town of Youngstown, Ohio, where I was born, northeastern Ohio, otherwise known as the Rust Belt. I was born to two hardworking blue-collar parents, my mom and dad, and I'm one of 4 sons, 2 older brothers and 1 younger brother. And man, did we torment my mom growing up. I feel bad about it to this day, but I can still hear her chasing us around the house with a wooden spoon or a halushki maker, for those of you who know what that is, or leather belt at worst, screaming at us, why couldn't we behave inside the house like everyone told her we behaved outside the house. Growing up in Ohio, there's basically 2 things to do: get in trouble or play sports. Unfortunately, my brothers and I played sports more often than got in trouble. We were captains of various sports teams and also did decently in academics and participated in a lot of clubs in high school, Key Club and National Honor Society. And looking back on it, I never had any anxiety getting up talking in front of people. It was just something that you did and you didn't think much about it. When I was 18, I moved away to Indiana, West Lafayette, Purdue University. And if you thought there's nothing to do in Youngstown, you should try to move to West Lafayette. But actually, I had a great time in college, probably, I can't remember most of it, so I must have had a good time. And I was on a 4-year ROTC scholarship. And like most college curriculums and ROTC leadership classes, I had to get up and talk in front of a lot of people. And again, looking back on it, never had any anxiety or never had any nervousness. It was just something you did. You were telling people something about yourself or something you enjoyed. And then something changed. In the spring of 1997, I got commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant in the United States Army as an infantry officer. That summer, I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, for my infantry officer basic course. And I remember that day, it was August 23rd, for in-process, and we had to stand up and tell people about ourselves and why we joined the infantry. Well, I stood up from the back row, for whatever reason I was in the back, and it felt like somebody punched me in the stomach and I had no oxygen in my lungs. And weirdest feeling in the world, and I'm trying to tell people where I'm from and why I joined the infantry. Somehow I managed to eke it out, but I'll never forget that feeling I had. Over the next couple of years as a junior officer, I always noticed this anxiety I had when I was talking to people. And when you're in the woods briefing your guys on a mission or an operations order, it's different. You're huddled down under a red lens flashlight while it's raining and you're talking to people. But getting up in front of people was something completely different. However, there are 2 experiences that changed my perspective on public speaking. The first being when I was the commander of the Military Freefall School in Yuma, Arizona. Military freefall is like civilian skydiving, only you're jumping out at 18,000 to 25,000 feet above ground level with oxygen masks on, oxygen tanks, and you have your weapons and your rucksacks carrying up to, in your body armor, night vision goggles. And we were tasked to give a demonstration to all our senior leadership in our community during the springtime of 2008. The purpose was to demonstrate the capability of military freefall to our senior leadership. I remember the night beforehand, sitting in the hotel, I memorized my whole speech word for word, line by line. I got up the next morning in front of 2-star, 3-star, 4-star generals, families and friends, and did horrible. I mean, it was a catastrophe. The only time I think I did well is when I finally just set my notes down and talked to people about what I knew about the military freefall capability. What's funny about this is one of the NCOs who was in charge of jumping out of the plane, when he landed and ran in front of the audience, they were all supposed to introduce themselves and talk about what they did and what they do. And here's a guy with his body armor on, night vision goggles, just jumped out of the plane with somebody strapped to him who was a dog handler, and that dog handler had a canine, a German Shepherd, strapped to him. And he lands on the ground and forgets what he has to say. And he recovers by saying, you know what, guys, I'm sorry I had a speech completely prepared, but I'm more nervous standing up in front of you, talking to you now, than I was jumping out of that plane at 18,000 feet. Which made me realize, okay, I'm not alone in this. The second time was when I was an aide-de-camp for the commanding general of the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School at Fort Bragg. And he was a dynamic speaker, one of these guys that would walk around the room and get everyone engaged. You'd rob a bank afterwards if that's what he wanted you to do. Well, after I got comfortable being his aide, he asked me one day after one of his many speeches in front of hundreds of people how I thought he did. And I said, sir, with all due respect, half joking, half serious, I really despise people who could get up there and speak that effortlessly. And he told me something I'll never forget. He goes, Matt, he said, you have to practice effective public speaking. Very few people are born with it. He told me when he first made 06 Colonel or a one-star general, there were speeches he did that was horrible. And the only way he got better was by practicing. So that made me realize I need to present myself in situations where I practice public speaking. Well, my wife and I moved here to Monterey, like Marara said, in June. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk to you about my wife. She's a beautiful lady from Cambodia. Her and her family moved here in the late 1970s, escaping the Khmer Rouge regime. And she put herself through high school and college and got her master's degree. Well, to this day, she still asks me certain grammar rules. What's present past participle? Why do I use this? And I just tell her, I don't know, that's how I grew up. So she decided to better herself and hire and do tutor lessons with an English teacher, English as a second language here in Monterey. And I figured if she was bettering herself, then I should better myself in public speaking. It was actually her tutor who told her that she couldn't come one day because she had Toastmasters in the morning she had to prepare for it. So I immediately looked up Toastmasters and found out there was a meeting every week here on Friday. That very first Friday I showed up, and I'm walking here around noon, and I hear voices emanating from this room. And that little voice inside my head started talking, that voice that tells you not to do something when you don't feel comfortable. Like, why do you want to subject yourself to this? Wouldn't you rather stay home on Friday and get a long bike ride or something? So, luckily I didn't listen to that voice inside my head and walk through those doors. So I stand before you here today, completely enthused that I didn't turn around in that hallway and I followed this road to Toastmasters. Thank you.